So here we are again with another lecture series, and this is actually going to be a two-part lecture series. I'll be reading from a short paper and then more of a descriptional paper, because I would like to flesh out more of the ideas that are held within the initial idea. And this will get into some pragmatics for those of you that are approaching self-knowledge in a pragmatic way. So the first paper will be called Self-Knowledge via Astral Phenomenon of Dream, explained via a parcel box. We'll get into that here in a second. And also too, dreams, where do they come from and what do they mean? If you haven't subscribed to the page, please give a subscribe, a like, a share if you find any of this content interesting and beneficial. So to begin, I'm going to start reading here on this paper that I wrote, that I was highly inspired to write, and there was some dream content that came up around it, so I will get into that as well and give you a prima facie dream interpretation as to what that could mean and as to what it actually did mean, what it became. But anyways, here we go. If we take a look at a cube, it is a box, let's say. The box, we can conjecture maybe by rattling it around, contains something. If anything, we can say that it came from the realm of ultimate ideas. Also the box, the container as well. The body is this cube metaphorically. Also the consciousness is cubic, and I'll be putting up some pictures to show you how maybe that could be so, and it actually is. This links body and mind further if we can understand this metaphor and link it to dreams and visions, which are the subjects of hopes and fears, things unconscious trying to be made conscious. And if attempting to, as we see, they almost have a will of their own, we can see that they have a will to be made known by a knower. The knower, we will say, is the ego perceiving. And this will, whose is it? It is the will of the self or God, made manifest through the unconscious. Maybe this box is a gift, a present. Maybe it is a presence inhabiting the box. Many myths had that idea as a motif via Vide Epimetheus, and the many myths that had the idea of this motive or as a motive. Pandora, Psyche, and the box containing the potion of beauty which caused sleep. If we open this box all the way, we get a cross, and I'll show you how that actually happens dimensionally. And also, the object is seen, but in the realm of dreams, and also goading of impulses, visions as well, premonitions and daydreams, which are lunar. We receive these objects dropped into our containers of consciousness, solar and lunar, symbolized by the cube, box, or cross. And just as an object is dropped in a present box or package, it is done in the psyche in the same way. The movement is a coagulation, which we take and assimilate or send back, repress. Sending it back is repressing. If we do take it much as it was given, we measure room for the object and keep it, and with the same measurement, whether we know it or not, we can cut it out also. But with this box, gift, or package, we are being measured, really our egos, by the self. I talked about that in, I think, one of the first videos that I put out. To receive the gift, to cut something out of our lives or lay something else in. And that's basically what it's asking us to do. And the lunar aspect is the measurement with our conscious participation on how self will enlarge our hearts, our lives, so as to enrich us. The ingenuity lies in the fact that the gift of vision has been given into the parcel or cube via the dream. When we open a physical cube, the cross is the way to interpret the message, and the cross equals symbol and archetype and unification of the opposites and their comparison. The cross not only symbolizes archetypal idea, but the joys and pains, hopes and fears that lie in the heart, mind, and body, all symbolized by the cross of the receiver. Isn't it the same feeling that comes, the joy, the swelling emotion, when a gift is physically given? However, spiritual gifts are far better in comparison. because the joy and enriching they produce are the sure and true riches of being. For example, connection and communion with self. Also, most physical gifts are typical and easily known. Those of the spiritual are known via knowledge of the unknown, and by striving to know, we by measuring are measured and enlarged, inlaid, or remolded and annexed for further enlargement. This simultaneous cooperative work is fourth dimensional, as it is done first with the look on the inside of the cube in the inner plane, then done via circumambulation of that cubic package, via sensing of the actuality that something happened within the vessel. All right. Then on the two-dimensional plane, the box is open into a cross, and it is the way by which to know again, via symbolism and reflection, and at last, the dimensional truth is the link between ego and self, and it begins to be known. As you know it, it knows you and shows you. The gift is always knowledge. And many a times, it gives you synchronicities, all right? So what I'm going to turn around and do is get to that part where it gives you synchronicities, all right? And I'm going to read a dream to you that coincided with the writing of that short piece right there. Hopefully you guys could understand it well. Hopefully it was easily understood. And if not, we're going to get into dreams. Where do they come from? And what do they mean? And that's going to brighten up the whole situation, remove some of the clouds so you can understand a bit more though, all right? So in this dream I had on June 21st of 2022, I saw this voodoo ritual where there was a fire below these women in a receptacle below the steps of what seemed like a long trailer. They were singing and chanting the most beautiful song. I felt I was falling under this spell. They were singing so beautifully. I saw from the viewpoint of one of their eyes, possibly, or their eyes, and saw that they were dressed so beautifully like women going to church. Just nice, beautiful colors. It was amazing. They burned these beautifully wrapped and prepared gifts in this fire they prepared for the ancestor and sang so heartfelt and chant. It almost seemed Brazilian, like Sergio Mendes music, and I wrote that almost in the form of an adjective because the way the music sounded like Sergio Mendes music. My mother, in her younger years, sung with Sergio Mendes band, Brazil 66, all the way through the early 90s as well though too. And I got to view her gift, got to view her art form, and it was nothing short of amazing. Got to go to the Hollywood Bowl, see her perform there, be VIP back there, Georgia Amphitheater, and several other places. But anyways, back to the dream. It felt like it was in my roots to sing that music and to do those type of rites. So the prima facie, on the surface, reading, and this is kind of a deep reading too, but I'm being humble about it. So the prima facie dream interpretation is the women, especially the one I see from the vantage point of, is an anima figure of high importance due to her spiritual office. She has magic ability, and her song is indicative of the art in my matrilineal line. And thus it is something I am driven by in a masculine way. Speaking, martial arts, video editing, advertising, my creative sides, of which these arts are but a few. She holds the gift as the receptacle of the message from myself to my egoic consciousness, and places it onto the altar of fire, which is my spirit, my heart, and mind. This gift is burned in this fire, which represents also my instincts and libido, and is an available hereditary energy on the physical realm side for me to use to manifest both fate and destiny. So that is my take on that dream, and there's a lot there if you think about it, unpack it, if you will. In the fact that this dream presented coagulatio symbolism And the coagulatio symbolism is seen in dreams when somebody is dropping something, when something is going from an upper level to a lower level. And this is what it means. I knew that there would be a following materialization and synchronicity. That's what happens with coagulatio dreams. Days later, and not too many days later, it came in the form of a toast to my recently deceased grandmother at a family member's house, where they spoke candidly of the gifts she bestowed upon us via her life lived and her examples. And some people will, may naysay and be like, well, your grandma recently passed. Of course that was going to happen. But it took me by surprise and took me back to that dream imagery, because I knew that this is what my dream was showing me. And the thing is, when you get synchronicities like that, it concretes the dream imagery and shows you, hey, pay attention to this. This is true. And it's something, if you really go with the synchronicity, it opens and unfolds different things in your life that you can actually step out on. They're platforms that you wouldn't know were there, and that you might, with your left brain, with your egoic consciousness, chop it up. And once you figure out that you understood, well, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe so, whatever, the egoic consciousness, especially if it is not in agreement with the lunar unconscious, is a naysayer, and it is an unbeliever. It is anathema. And that is where most of us that are not delving into the riches of the unconscious have come to find ourselves, which I will actually talk about in this next page in one of the sections. And we will proceed forward from here to dreams. Where do they come from? What do they mean? So dreams are realms, so to speak, existing and playing out beyond the realm of time. Most dreams occur in the REM stage of sleep, and although they may seem to last for a long time, they are usually only a few seconds or more in duration. On a hypothetical average, an average adult gets 7 hours or more sleep per night. It takes about an hour and a half on average to enter REM sleep stage, leaving 5 hours and 30 minutes for dreaming time. It is believed that you go through 3 to 5 REM cycles per night, with each cycle getting longer as the night of sleep progresses. The last REM cycle usually lasts an hour, so it's not a full 5 hours and 30 minutes, all right? Emotions are processed vividly by the brain during REM sleep. Also, very importantly, the amygdala, a very old brain center dating back to prehistoric times, which processes emotions, is activated during REM sleep. That's very important. The amygdala, also known as the serpent brain, which I'll probably be referring to it as that in this lecture here, is part of the limbic system, which mediates many aspects of emotion and memory. It used to be thought that the amygdala was involved primarily with fear and anxiety and other emotions related to adverse stimuli. Stimuli being a thing that rouses activity or energy in someone or something, a spur or incentive, also a thing or event that evokes a specific functional reaction in an organic tissue or in an organ or tissue. And we can think of a whole lot of things that incite function in organs and tissues, right? But we ain't gonna talk about that here. Continuing forward, the amygdala is now known to be involved in positive emotions elicited by appetitive, rewarding stimuli. The fact that the amygdala is activated in dreaming points to the fact that dreams are the realms of fears and hopes of the individual, which are usually disposed towards our observing conscious ego in a mythopoetic allegory. And the word allegory comes from Greek allos, agoria. Allos meaning other, agoria meaning speaking, and that is as if language. All right. And there was a side note that I put next to the word appetitive. Right. When saying appetitive, the word eat is constellated, and that is Proto-Indo-European ed or ed, to eat. And this is the root associated with this idea, and is the idea of the Freudian id, the component of the psyche which is the part of the mind in which innate instinctive impulses and primary processes are manifest. And in the Germanic translation is es, meaning that, which was the word use of Freud himself, because Freud came up with the terminology of the id, superego, and possibly the ego as well, though, too, as he put out the accepted version, first version, possibly we could look at, of psychology. All before were pretty much termed as philosophers, right? P-I-E-E-S, which is the word S, meaning that, but in the Proto-Indo-European, which ties in with the Germanic, it means to be. Higher or supra to this word root is ers, to be in motion. So to be sets you in motion, and that's an undercurrent that's in that's going to be divulged in this idea as we get further, because dreams set something in motion. Dreams set you in motion. The self is relaying something to the ego that's setting something in motion. Okay, so continuing forward. The fact that the amygdala is activated in dreaming points to the fact that dreams are the realms of fears and hopes of the individual, which are usually disposed towards our observing conscious ego in a mythopoetic, allegoric, as if language way, basically. The anatomical projections, for example, the output of the amygdala, can be directed to both subcortical and cortical brain structures. And at that, those known to mediate different autonomic, physiologic, and behavioral expressions of emotional state. Decision-making, attention, and memory are also thought to be modulated by the amygdala, aka serpent brain. So, on to the next page. So to sum up, I entered into this discussion about the amygdala in order to shed light upon dreams appearing in our egoic consciousness. And as it is rightly called the serpent brain, it is also a component of our multi-centered brain, which is older than the mammalian traces or species of life, which is another reason why dreams must exist beyond time. Very possibly, and I will explain this point further to go on to the next point here by summing up. The reptilian brain is the attention gatekeeper and decision maker. It pairs with the central/emotional part of the brain as a unit that gives you gut feelings about a decision, is responsible for instinct and survival, and motivates you to follow reward and also towards the path of least painful resistance at times. It focuses on survival, or focuses us towards that, and will involve other parts of the brain foreign towards the end of survival. Its language is emotional, visual, so we already have dream content and subject matter there. And it is also symbolic content, which it speaks through, right? Which contains contrast, holistic ideas, and it emphasizes the bigger picture from start to finish, beginning to end. It is important to note that symbolism focuses on the deep truths of the self. This center is possibly the means to that end. This center meaning the center of the amygdala or the serpent brain. Meaning this is the key to unlocking the imagery of dreams, and also the bestower or vessel of bestowal of dreams. So I'm going to go back because there was a star when it was talking about the emotional part of the brain, the central/emotional part of the brain, and when I was talking about the portion of the brain central emotional, I'm talking about the triune brain model, and I think I'll put a picture of that up as well, though, too. That way you can refer to that. Okay, so okay. In respect to dreams being the realm of hopes and fears, this implies expectations. And expectations are realistically measured out, if not mere fantasy, based upon past experiences. The serpent brain is involved primarily with fear and anxiety and other emotions relating or related to adverse stimuli, and is also involved with positive emotions springing from appetitive or rewarding stimuli. Aspects of aversion or strife and desire or passion is what is meant by those things. This also then is a description of what is meant when I mention, and I usually always do, the goading process. Linking this to time, our sense of time is usually determined by our experiences. For example, the linear occurrence of stimuli within the environment and how it affects our sense of time, while monotony makes it difficult to maintain a sense of time. So the past experiences that we've had kind of taint our understanding of what is going on around us in time. You know what I mean? If we have a lot of things going on around us at a fast pace, time seems to fly. If things are monotonous and slow, trust me, time's going to drag on forever. You know what I mean? And like a child, you're going to tell yourself, I'm bored. So how we relate to and exist in time via the egoic consciousness is episodically segmented, much like a dream, and known and recalled in sequences via memories of these sequences of segmented time. Dreams reflect information to the conscious ego via the serpent brain's functions, but it does so outside of the rules of the real world time, and also via augmentations of memories. For example, objects at places as far as at a certain time in life, I was here at this place or another, people, known forms, and facts, things you know, right? And presents these things to us in the language of the serpent brain. For example, this language is symbol, allegory, myth, memory, hopes, fears, desires, etc. These augmentations of memories operate on a definition of what, where, and when. The why of the vision is deduced via the language of the serpent brain itself, aforementioned as is spoken in the form of the dream, and many times will link to a synchronistic reason that will appear in the psyche if one ponders the meaning of the dream, or more so synchronistically in the outer world if one waits for it mindfully, or if this synchronicity from the vision just happens to take him or her by surprise. This is possible as well, though, too, like in the situation that happened when they made a toast to my grandmother and the gifts that she bestowed upon us. That took me by surprise, and it was a synchronicity, and it came. It was heralded by that dream in a large way. So, and this brings forth the how. That synchronicity brings forth the how. You know, it's a affect, or it's an effect. You know, it's something that synchronistically links to the subjective image of the dream and the subjective emotions. You know, okay, so. So references to who, what, when, where, why, and how are from the who, what, when, where, why, and how idea of descriptive formulation of mental image of facts. Because the thing is, if you're talking to somebody about something and you don't fill in the who, what, when, where, why, and how, they don't get so much of a good mental image. When all is said and done, I mean, you know, when something happens, like if you have to write a report up about something that happens in a car accident or something, it's who, what, when, where, why, and how, you know. That helps to form a visual image of the circumstances, and dreams do that as well, though, too. Okay, so here we go to the next page. The collective unconscious, I must stress, as I have found, gives dream imagery prospectively given through the same auspice of the serpent brain via its language as aforementioned. I told you what that language was, but rather in the form of pure symbolism and myth. It is given in the same form and way as before, yet with more notable overtones, ideas of mythological motif, of seemingly greater importance, or of seemingly greater import. These dreams can sometimes speak a straightforward answer, yet usually readily follow the structure of myth and legend. And I use the word auspice in reference to the serpent brain. Auspice is a perfect reference to the serpent brain, as it also references the word or words to look at and look at again, and also is the root word for bird. Birds are more reptilian than mammalian, which also the serpent brain is. It's more of a reptilian center than it is a mammalian center that we use for everyday life as mammals, which is why the transpersonal star in the Rosarium Philosophorum Picture 1 turns into a dove, an avian creature, as the instigator of the goading process towards unity of the opposites. Okay, so where did I last leave off from that footnote? This type of information, this type of dream, and I'm talking about the dreams from the collective unconscious, right, points to the truth. If the serpent brain / amygdala is the vision producer, or more so, rightly spoken, the relayer of the messages of the self to the ego, this serpentine center is age old and is a relayer of dreams from the collective unconscious. The type of information relayed is, according to C.G. Jung, a form of the unconscious common to mankind as a whole and originating in the inherited structure of the brain, which is distinct from the personal unconscious, which arises from personal experience. The collective unconscious containing archetypes, which are universal primordial images and ideas that are derived from the experience of the human race cumulatively, which are the original patterns or models of which all things of the same type are but representations or copies. And I put a footnote here, and I'm actually going to put this on the screen. See Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1 through 6. See Hebrews 9, 22 through 24. And summing it up, they basically go to say that in a roundabout way that the temple above is the main pattern that the temple on earth below is a copy of. This idea has implications to the more finite and less existential, yet not of less overall importance, superego of Sigmund Freud. So, without continuing too much further on a topic that could span much more length, dreams from the collective unconscious, even dreams from the personal unconscious standpoint, which still have a mythological motif and message from the self, though less easily accessible as the former, which is the ones that are from the collective unconscious, which actually have symbolism. And the ones I'm talking about that have symbolism, that are right in your face if you know the symbolism, are the dreams from the personal unconscious. But that's if you have the doctrine or system by which to recognize it. And they come from a place that is beyond time. And if in time, it's only that time as you perceive it by apprehending memories from their earmark appearances in your dream as person or object, right? And the person is the who, the object is the what. From a certain time in life is the when. Someplace you knew, from a certain time in life is the what. Sorry about that. The when is like someplace you knew, and then aspects of a place you might know, right? Is where, and then the place that I kind of messed up that last portion, but you get the drift. There's a who, what, when, where, and the why is the synchronicity that comes and the meaning that's gathered from the dream itself. All right. So the compression of timing in which dreaming occurs, for example, a few seconds of dreaming which seems to take up more time than in actuality. Some dreams seem like they last for like over 2 or 3 hours, like talk about a nightmare, right? But we only stay in REM state for 90 minutes a night on the average, which is the prospective window of time for dream manifestation. The inconsistency that I talked about right there represents the illusion of time. Time as we know it is an import which governs and orders by use of a governmentally/socially implemented system by which you and yours and my life is measured and synchronized towards the ends of and demands of those that first implemented it, to include their successors, which use it towards organizing us to their benefit, which is inevitably the toil and labor of those in society. So dream symbology and the symbol system of the tarot, for instance, operate and are interpreted in the same manner as language. And I put an asterisk next to that, so I'm going to read the margin. This language is the same type of language as the serpent brain, in that it uses, for example, metaphor, allegory, myth, symbolism, which uncovered the desire, wish, hope, or fear in the querent of the tarot reading or in the content of the dream. I alluded to this idea in the video about the similarities of the rebus and the rebus. Sigmund Freud spoke in the Dream Workbook, which was written in 1900, of this matter in these terms. The dream content is expressed as it were in a pictographic script, the characters of which have to be transposed individually into the language of the dream thoughts. If we attempted to read these characters according to their pictorial value instead of according to their symbolic relation, we should clearly be led into error. Jacques Lacan, who I'm very fond of a lot of his ideas on psychology and the way that he almost mathematized and structuralized his system, right? And the people that learned from his system over time, structuralized it, almost mathematized it. It's actually pretty awesome, and it gets into the word and it gets into desire. So it's something of great import to study, I believe. But Jacques Lacan stated about dreams, or the receptacle of the dream, the unconscious, that the unconscious is structured like a language. Jung spoke of the language of dreams such: it is characteristic of dreams to prefer pictorial and picturesque language to colorless and merely rational statements. And I'm going to say something about the colorless and merely rational statements. That is left brain thinking. The dream basically speaks in a more right brain language. It speaks in the language of symbolism, holistic ideas, of emotion. It speaks in the idea of very, very, very symbolic notions, and that's something that needs to be understood. It doesn't speak in the language that we speak. It doesn't really use the letters, the numbers, and different things. Although you will see possibly letters and numbers in dreams, and they almost say that it's impossible to read letters and numbers in dreams, although I have done that very vividly. But anyways, continuing forward, as daily adaptation to the reality of things demands accurate statements, left brain thinking again, as I was talking about, we have learned to discard the trimming of fantasy and have thus lost a quality that is still characteristic of the primitive mind. And I put an asterisk by the word trimming and by a word that's going to pop up here that is termed fringe. Those words have some very, very, very detailed meanings, and I looked into the Semitic roots on those words, and I will put them up on the screen for you so that you can see in highlight the import of those words to what is being stated here. So we basically learned to discard the trimming of fantasy and have thus lost a quality that is still characteristic of the primitive mind. And he termed when he's saying primitive mind, he's talking about individuals that don't have such a highly structured society in which the left brain is constantly being used. We have to add things up and subtract things, and we have this social hierarchy and system and time to keep us all synced together. These are people that are basically living in the bush, basically living in the jungle, or living in a more tribal type lifestyle. Primitive thinking sees its object surrounded by a fringe, the asterisk again, we were talking about when we talked about the trimming, of associations. So they see objects, all types of objects, right, by surrounded by a fringe of associations. And that's a key on how we need to think if we're to get back to that type of thinking that opens up dreams and opens up an understanding of the more right brain thinking. And if we're to get into equilibrium of the bicameral mind, and if we're to get into creating a rapport between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, which is a great and grand part of the great work. Anyways, so the primitive thinking sees its objects surrounded by a fringe of associations which have become more or less unconscious in civilized man. We don't even know how to do it anymore, right? Thus, animals, plants, and inanimate objects can acquire properties that are most unexpected to the white man. And he wrote the white man part in there, and that's what I liked about Carl Gustav Jung, is that he was he was very humble and very fatalistically realistic about the things that he talked about, and he looked at both sides of things. All right, so continuing, what we call psychic identity or participation mystique has been stripped off our world of things, and this is like participation mystique is like when you are seeing spirits and souls and different things and objects and in nature, and you really identify with those things as being an intrinsic part of the objects, and it's important to delineate between the two, but it's also important to cultivate the ability to do things of that nature, to have a rapport with the unconscious. So what we call psychic identity or participation mystique has been stripped off our world of things. It is exactly this halo or fringe, again we use the word fringe, of consciousness, as William James calls it, which gives a colorful and fantastic aspect to the primitive world. And I'm going to interject one more time because I need to concrete this and bring this home for everybody that's listening, and that's that I'm telling you, before I got into these studies, which was years ago, like I really started heavy into the more esoteric and the more unconscious revealing aspects of my studies, and systematizing of symbolism studies when let me see, 2010, 9, 8, about 2007, 2008 is when I started, all right? And it changed my life. It changed my world. I went from a world of depression, a world that just seemed like I knew what everything was, and it became drab and it became boring, and there was just no beauty in life, to a life that was amazing and was abundantly filled with things to explore and to see deeper in at every turn. And I found that the systems that I was ingesting would speak to me and would basically teach me about itself. It's like and that's the thing with like Kabbalah, tarot. As you're internalizing the systems, they teach themselves to you, so that's amazing. Anyways, so we have lost it, the ability to see as the primitive did, to such a degree that we do not recognize it when we meet it again, and are baffled by its incomprehensibility, its depth. And then sometimes the fact that, we're so left brain in this society that we can't understand like how the right brain is getting at us. But within this paper, maybe there's some allusions and angles to things that you might be able to find some way of grasping some more understanding on this. Now, quickly, the way to get it back is what I'm going to talk about. And that is to acclimate yourself to myth, to a symbolic system of keys such as the tarot, also to the astrological symbols and planets and their spiritual and psychological meanings. Tie this knowledge to a symbolic map and the keys of the tarot, etc. Right? For example, it could be the runes of the Elder Futhark. There are a bunch of other symbolic key systems that you could study, and Elder Futhark has the Yggdrasil world tree that you can pair the runes on, and that you can learn more from. But continuing, also take up the astrological signs and planets and their myths to one another. Memorize them, make them second nature. Tie the symbolic map to another symbolic map, marrying harmony to harmony and harmony into a doctrine. This doctrine, held within the unconscious, used as a new way even to see the simplest things in life via the rich soil that the unconscious figuratively is, will produce sprouts, trees, and interconnected roots. One system, one symbol will inform the other and grow via the other until you begin to see that, like a magnet, you are attracting light beyond, from beyond, but it's inside, right? And it's from beyond the insignificant light of the ego, the insignificant light of the left brain that thinks it just knows. I know, I'm conscious and I have a science, it's beyond that, because the truth of the matter is it's so very hard for me even to write down some of this stuff and to explain it in a way that it's spoken to me, and Jacques Lacan even says that when you name something, when you put something out into words, you kill it, meaning that and the scriptures even talks about the dead letter sense of the word and the spiritual sense of the word, in which is life, right? So continuing forward, so you're going to realize that you're attracting light from the self, from something higher than the ego, from that light of the self that's within, right? You will realize yourself to be a symbol that is attracting something higher. Yes, from a serpentine force. You will receive signs from the Father, and those signs will be taken back up to the Father by the same serpentine force. You then, like the primitives, will receive the language of light that casts away the shadow of the lesser light. For example, mere intellectual reason. You will then have your assurance that you are one of the sons of God. But you must work and remember the words not only of the Gnostics, which is what I've just aforementioned. That's actually a Gnostic doctrine, that the Father relays the symbols and the messages to those that have the right doctrine in a magnetic fashion through the aspect that is represented by the serpentine logos to the human being and its conscious and unconscious faculties as a symbol, and really, like I said before in the last video, as a twin of God, right? So I'm talking about these words being mentioned by the Gnostics, but also of Christ. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Also study to show thyself approved to God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Because there's opposites in those symbolisms. There's opposites in that word of truth. And when you can get down to the understanding and the idea of those opposites, you hitting pay dirt, and you're going to get light. You're going to receive light. You're going to receive illumination. You're going to open up your consciousness. You're going to become conscious. You're going to come into being. You see what I'm saying? Instead of just simply and merely existing in such a monotonous, dull, lackluster world that's bereft, that's by our way of thinking in society, that's been raped of its power, of its significance, of its meaning. You get that back. So continuing forward, right? I referred to 2 words that I'm going to throw some things up here for, but we can get kind of into them just a little bit as I do have a little bit of time right here. So to look has a real big something really big to say about what is going on with what I'm talking about in these dreams. Take some time to look at your dreams. Take some time to see what they're talking about and look again and again. I've had dreams that I've had years ago that were big dreams of big import, and even some that were of what seemed like lesser import. And by going back over them, I was able to extract something more out of them that let me know where I'm at currently, right? And I even showed that in one of the last addendums to a video that I did just recently on the Hedernheim Mithraic relief, right? But so to look is actually in the Proto-Indo-European WEID to see, and I'm gonna throw that up on the screen and just peruse some of the meanings of that. And it's very shocking that it will have some ideas that are going to speak to a lot of things that I talked about here, as far as having your eyes open, as far as being able to see, being able to be shown more truth, right? From visions that you're receiving. A dream just isn't, it's just a dream I had, I just, it's a gift from God. It's a gift from the higher self. And there's a rabbi that even said, a dream unread or uninterpreted is like a message from God, unreceived or unread. Like if God, or the self, if you will, right, the higher self is trying to reach you through a dream or through a vision that you have, right, you just throw it to the side. And what makes you throw it to the side? The ego, the rational, logical side that says, oh, that's kind of irrational, that doesn't make any sense. But there's a way to crack into it, and that's by understanding the language, which the right hemisphere of the brain, which the amygdala, the serpent brain, is trying to use to speak to you. You have to understand it in order to crack open the code, which is not really super rough to do once you understand how it is speaking. So WEID, Proto-Indo-European root, means to see. And then you also have Proto-Indo-European root SPEK, to observe. I'm going to give a little bit of time for those to pass on the screen. And from Proto-Indo-European root SPEK, to observe, you get the word spectrum, which the zodiac is a spectrum of colors, a spectrum of ideas that are actually in a nice ideological order, right? Also to inspect. And then spec S is linked to the Latin word for he who sees, he who is not blind anymore, right? And then you have the word horoscope that comes out of the Proto-Indo-European root spec. And the horoscope is the system of 12 signs, once again, that are ruled by 7 planetary essences, right? And if you get and look into the real true import of the horoscope, you realize that it's not that thing that you just look up, horoscope.com or something like that. Although those could have some synchronistic meanings to you that you're like, oh man, I did get something from that. But it's deeper than that, though, because once you understand the language that the unconscious is using to speak to you, you start even getting spoken to through that wheel of the zodiac as well, though, too. And the wheel of the zodiac actually becomes a symbol by which you can decipher things, and in time we'll get into some of those ideas as well, though, too. All right. So I will throw up some of these Semitic roots because they have much import to what we're talking about during some portions of this video. But I would like to get into the idea for the word fringe or hem, right? And that's Proto-Indo-European root B-R-E-G, breg, right? Which means to break into pieces, into parts, right? And then you get the word fractal from that. If you've ever looked at a fractal, you can go really, really deep into it, and you can zoom into the individual pieces, and the individual pieces have parts of the whole that makes it. So every part of that fractal has a part of that whole fractal in it, you know? And that's what a dream is like. That's what this whole conscious existence is like. All the symbols lead back to another symbol. You'll see that I'm talking about a lot of symbolism in these lectures, and the thing is they'll link to other lectures that I've spoken on. One lecture will elucidate the information in another lecture, and that's why this lecture series is called Thinking in Circles, because a circle is the symbol of a self, but we're in some way, because we're using time and we're using media and we're using a platform format, we're segmenting that circle and delineating certain parts of the circle or the self that we're learning about. So we get the word fractal from PIE breg, right? And then we also get the word fraction. A fraction always has a part that is part of a whole. And that needs no explanation, because I just spoke of that when I talked about the word fractal, right? And then we have fragment. By the part you can know the whole. I put that in parentheses there by fragment, you know, because like if you break a pot into shards, those shards, like, yeah, they are individually each their own piece, but they are ideologically still a pot. It was once a pot. That image, that main idea by which that pot was created, yeah, you broke the physical pot, but you didn't break the idea of the pattern of that pot that is truthfully indestructible. It has archetypal roots as well too. So the next Proto-Indo-European root is semi, and semi is or semi is linked to the word half, and half is like as a member, a first member of a compound, right? And semi means half as a first member of a compound, a part of a whole, right? That's what we're looking at when we're looking at symbolism, and we're learning symbolism. We're learning part, but by the part you can know the whole, right? They say by the paw of the let me see. By the paw of the lion, or by the paw you can know it's a lion. There's a Latin statement. I think I might throw that up there though too. Ex ungue leonem. And I butchered that Latin saying, but I'm gonna put it up there though because it relates to this idea. So sandblind, meaning having poor vision, is in the idea for semi. And if you think about it, being partially blind, we come into this existence being partially blind, and where you say, oh man, you're the one with glasses, but I got 50-50 vision, man. I could see a bird in a tree from a mile away. Okay, but you're still semi-blind. You're still partially blind, because you come into this world actually having a complete holistic ability to see and perceive through the right hemisphere. But the truth of the matter is you lack the egoic consciousness to relate the information that you're seeing, and you're actually dwindling and getting away from that that holistic level of consciousness as you're getting older in the teenage years and further. And once you get into your late 30s, 40s, then you realize, hey, I need to return back to an understanding of the self, back to that right brain logic, back to that pure holistic state. Sometimes, I mean, it takes people way longer and so many different downfalls with wrestling with their egoic consciousness and trying to find their place in the world, pushing up against things that they can, finding out that certain things they're pushing up against fall down and crumple them. And some of them don't make it back to the understanding of the self because they are crushed irreparably, right? So semi also deals with the word semi, which means half, part. But by the part, you have the whole. So I'll throw those up there, and I will also throw up some Semitic roots that link to this idea that are very, very, very key and important to what we have discussed here. But all in all, we're done here, and I'm going to wrap this transmission up, and I hope you've been enriched by this installation of this YouTube page and this lecture series. And I'm just going to continue to keep every week giving you these longer lectures throughout the week. I'll be posting some shorter lecture ideas, and my main biggest hope and my passion in this goal is to see that people can get something out of this that spurs them, that incites them towards the self and the self-knowledge, and spurs and incites them towards their purpose and what it is that they're really called to do. You know what I mean? I just hope that the things that I'm saying, I'm not up here to just hear myself talk or to speak. I'm here to make sure that you are lifted up in a positive way, and in a way that in the respective walk of life that you're in, around the respective circle that you're in, that you're able to also give inklings of this type of knowledge, maybe by recommending the page, or maybe by taking these words as your own, you know, which there are your words. This is your doctrine. This is your knowledge. It's self-knowledge. So with that, I will terminate this YouTube lecture. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your ear. Stay open, stay conscious, stay awake. Until next time.